and welcome to another writing vlog. This vlog is going to be about getting through a difficult scene in my book and also hitting some really high word count days. If you're new here, hello, my name is Stephanie and I am writing my very first book. Why have I hit these goals for this vlog? First of all, let me talk about why this scene coming up is so difficult. I had a lot of difficulty with it in draft 2 and I'm currently in draft 3 and I have reached the point where this scene is happening. And this is a very, very big scene. And by big, I mean there are lots of characters in this scene. In the same room, there is, I don't know, not gonna do the math off the top of my head, but there's probably 10 to 15 characters in the room at one time. And so it's hard for me as a writer to write this scene because there are so many different people speaking and you have to give everyone the opportunity to say something and you have so many different personalities and it's just really exhausting trying to organize it all in your head and then get it on paper and then just reading it through and seeing if it makes sense. So this scene is what I'm going to start today. I don't know how long it's going to take me to do. It is, let me look at my chapter count. Okay, so I'm calling it a scene, but it's really a big event. And this big event spans 3 chapters in my current outline for my novel. So I have a lot to write. And that brings me to my second purpose of this vlog, which is high word counts. Because I have been working on draft 3 for 1 month and I have had 0 high word count days with the exception of yesterday. Let me pull up another spreadsheet. Yesterday, I wrote over 3,000 words, and that is a personal best for draft 3. And typically, when I have a normal writing day, I write around 2,000 to 2,500. So anything over that for me is what I consider a big writing day. I wrote 3,100 words, but in reality, I probably wrote about 1,000-ish more than that. Because what ended up happening is I deleted an entire chapter of my book. So that reduced my word count by however long that chapter was. Now the reason my word counts have been kind of low so far is because I am writing this draft a lot differently than I wrote drafts 1 and 2. With drafts 1 and 2, I started on a blank Word document and I wrote just straight from my mind onto the paper, essentially writing the entire book from scratch. I've done that twice. With the third draft, however, I am not doing that. I am taking what I already have and improving upon it. So I am adding in some new scenes, I'm deleting some scenes, and then I'm just rereading what I have and just editing it and trying to make it sound better or rearranging scenes throughout the novel. Because of this, my word counts are changing not as a function of how many words I'm actually sitting down to write, but as a function of, okay, this is where I started in the book and this is where I ended in the book and this is how many words I have now. And surprisingly enough, over the course of writing this third draft, I'm about 1/3 of the way in and I have lost about 5,000 words. So it's right now sitting at 5,000 words less than when I started. So I have been slowly losing words, which also accounts for why my word count is so low every day, because I'm just deleting a lot more than I'm writing. However, I do anticipate this to change because I am incorporating some new elements and scenes into my story, and that will help increase the word count. So it's my anticipation that when I hit these new parts of the book, I'll be writing a lot more from scratch, essentially, and I will raise my word count over time. So yesterday I was really successful because I sat down and wrote all day long, which has not happened in the last month. In case you missed it, I went to Scotland, and so I didn't do a lot of writing because I went to Scotland and prepared for that trip and then came back from that trip, and writing it was hard to find time. I found time, but it was hard. Now I'm in more of a space where I can afford to spend a lot more hours in the day writing. And that's definitely what I did yesterday. And it really showed. I had my best word count day so far. So what I plan to do now is to, at least for a few days, continue that. Write a a lot more than I have been and try and put up some high word count days. I am currently in chapter 13. That's where I left off this morning. I did write for about an hour this morning. Now it's time for me to get back for writing for the afternoon. It's gonna be dark in like 2 hours, daylight savings time. But that will allow me to write for a long period of time, like in a cozy environment. I love writing when it's dark out and it's cozy. So far, daylight savings time has been really helpful, but we'll see if it's helpful later tonight. It is the evening and I have finished with chapter 13. I'm so happy I got an entire chapter finished today. I wrote 1,900 words today, and it's not a super high word count. It's not exactly what I was striving for, but it's still pretty good. I'm happy with 1,900 words. The reason it's not as high is because I go back and reread the chapter after I'm finished. So I finished chapter 13, and then I went back to the beginning of chapter 13 and reread everything I wrote. And I checked for things like grammar errors and can I just reword things better, things like that. And so I spent a significant portion of time rereading and revising the chapter I had just written. So even though I wasn't really writing a lot, I was doing a lot of revision. I think this is another reason why my word counts just aren't very high, even though I'm putting in a lot of time, is because I do spend a lot of time reading what I've written and thinking about ways to make it better, or how can I make it have a more emotional impact. I know there was one small paragraph in this story that I seriously probably spent a half hour on. Is that too long? Probably, but it's a paragraph that just has like this emotional aspect to it, and I just really wanted to make sure it was perfect in my eyes before I move forward. I don't do that with every paragraph. This one was a little bit more special for me, so I was okay with spending that amount of time doing it. I have 2 chapters left according to my chapter by chapter outline, but I already think this is going to get a 3rd chapter added onto it, or a 4th chapter for the total, because my chapter by chapter outline today, I only wrote about half of what was in my outline in chapter 13, and it was already at a total of 3,000 words for this entire chapter. And that's really long, and I think it's appropriate for what happened in the chapter, considering what kind of event it is and everything. But I'm missing all the other scenes, and these other scenes are important and I need to bring them in. I can add it into chapter 14, but chapter 14 really is its own kind of thing. And so there's gonna be maybe a little bit of juggling around of scenes tomorrow and trying to figure out where to put things. And I'm not quite sure if I'm gonna be adding a chapter or 2 for this scene. The intention was to delete, and I did delete a lot. I think this originally was like 5 or 6 chapters. So this is already a lot better than it was before. And I always say this, when I'm kind of reorganizing something or reimagining it, I like to write what I want to write. I don't care about the length. I don't care about thinking about whether or not it should be in there. I want to write a complete story from start to finish and then go back and look at it again later and make my decisions then. And that's what I'm going to do for this scene. I've already taken out a significant amount of little scenes from this big event, and I may need to take out more, but I think what I have now is important, and I don't want to compromise my story at this point. So tomorrow I will start on chapter 14. I will start with the stuff that I didn't get to put in chapter 13, and we'll see how it goes. Done with chapter 14, and I wasn't going to talk to you, but I'm just having such a great time that I wanted to talk about it. It's one of my favorite chapters to write so far. This chapter overall is just so good. I think the characters' dialogue is amazing. The interactions between them are really good. There's action, there's tension, there's emotions, and it's one of those chapters where I just sat here and I was writing and I was just like giggling to myself because the lines that they were funny. And as a reader, I really enjoy those moments in a book where you're like, oh, they said that. Yeah, that's a moment I have in this chapter. Today, it's just like everything fell into place with this chapter. I'm not gonna say it was perfect, but I feel like it was really close. Like I said, the dialogue, the action, the description, like everything to me felt like it was on point. And it just made this chapter so good. And that maybe is why I finished it so quickly today. It's only 3 p.m. I only worked on it for like a half hour this morning before I went to ballet class. And then I picked it back up, obviously, after lunch. And so I really haven't been working on it that long, a few hours, and I've already finished a chapter. So I think I made really great progress so far today. I'm going to continue on to chapter 15. We'll see how far I get today. It's going to be probably the most complicated chapter of this big event. I know that going in, so it's very unlikely that I'll finish it tonight, but hopefully I can finish it up by tomorrow. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on chapter 15. Done for the evening. I have to admit, I kind of got burned out at the end of the night, and this happens when I spend a significant portion of the day writing. I just get tired. I get physically tired and mentally tired because I'm sitting in the same position and doing the same thing for hours. And I kind of just had enough. Like, I was trying really hard to focus. I couldn't focus. I was getting antsy, and so I've decided to call it a night a little bit earlier than I had planned. But I was still really, really productive today. I wrote 2,800 words, which is really good. I really wish I could break like 3,000, but as I said before, I think it was like 2,000 or 2,500 above that is what I was aiming for, so I definitely did that. I'm also really excited about how far along in the book I've gotten. Just in one day, I've pretty much done a chapter and a half, which is a lot more than I usually do. Usually I can get about a chapter a day, and sometimes it's even a lot less than that. I was really on the ball today. I got a lot done. I am currently on chapter 15. I'm probably about halfway through chapter 15. It's hard for me to judge because what I'm doing is taking part of one chapter and part of another chapter and merging them. I'm rearranging these scenes in draft 2 a little bit. And this scene that I'm working on right now in particular was supposed to happen like a few days later, and now it's happening in the same day. So I had to rearrange it and reword things and make things make sense chronologically. And all these scenes that were in between these two, I'm either deleting or repurposing for later. And even just like an hour ago, there was one scene that was going to be in between these two scenes, and it just clicked in my head like, oh, this shouldn't even happen during this big event. It should happen later. So I've already moved one scene over. I don't think my chapter count for the big scene is going to really increase just because I've moved some things out of that, and all these little sections that I wanted to include are actually the word count of each chapter is pretty reasonable. My plan is to finish this up tomorrow, and that way I've gotten myself through the big event. I'm really excited that I've kind of like gone through this really fast. I did think that this big event that I'm writing would take a lot longer than it has been. But hey, I'm all for it. The faster it goes, the faster I get done with this draft, and that's a good thing. I'm going to go ahead and get ready for bed, get some rest. That way I'm ready to work on chapter 15 tomorrow. I'm done with my big scene, and I'm so thrilled that it's over. It actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be. I really envisioned me struggling through these few chapters, and I did struggle, but I did manage to get them done in a timely manner, so that's at least an accomplishment I'm proud of. Today I wrote 1,500 words. There's a possibility I continue to write more tonight, I'm not sure. And then this chapter, chapter 15, ended at 2,800 words. It's a little long, but I knew it was going to be long because it's like a really big, important thing that happens. Also, I may divide it. Haven't decided yet. We'll see what happens with the rest of the book. As far as high word count days, I don't think I really achieved super high word count days like I was hoping for. I was hoping for like 3,000, 4,000 word days after trying so hard for these last few days to do that. I came to the realization that I just don't think it's going to happen very often, at least in the way that I am writing draft 3. I'm doing so much revision and deleting and rewriting and moving things around that it's just a totally different approach than how I was writing draft 2, which was sitting down with a blank page of paper and just writing words. I don't sit down and write words. I sit down and read what I wrote and then say, okay, yeah, I'm gonna keep that. Or I'll say, okay, I need to reword these 3 sentences, and I retype 3 sentences. Or I just say, I hate that, or it's not relevant, and I delete it from my manuscript. There's just so much more, I guess, different types of ways to work on my writing in this drafting style as opposed to just sitting down and writing. I mean, I'm still writing a lot of words, but there's a lot more that's going into it. But it's a good thing to know because now I'm not feeling very discouraged that I'm not having high word count days. I've come to the fact that this is what it's going to be. I'm going to be hovering around 1,500 to 2,500 words in a day just because of the speed at which I'm going through my novel and how I'm doing it. Well, now that the big event is done, it is on to, I'm starting Act 2 now, and that is going to be the next thing I write. It's going to be starting at chapter 16, and I will see you in the next writing vlog.